Positive Lens podcast. I'm your host, Scott T. Each week, we will bring you positive law enforcement news stories from across the globe, shared by departments and citizens like yourself. In our Getting to Know Your Local Leo segment, we will speak with a member of the law enforcement community about everyday life and most things non-law enforcement, as we hope to adjust your focus so you see that members of your local law enforcement community are not much different than you and me.
Hello, listeners, and welcome to episode 33. This is a special edition episode where we speak with Brian Sizemore. He is the father of Lucas Sizemore and founder of the Lucas Foundation. He is joined by Jared Murphey, the Deputy Special Agent in charge from Homeland Security Investigations in Detroit, who is representing the Lucas Crusade Bring Them Home 1,000-mile charity relay run. In this episode, Brian shares with us the worst tragedy that has ever happened to the Sizemore family, the impact it has had on him, his wife, their youngest son, and respective parents. We learn how a foundation born out of tragedy is seeking to provide vast amounts of mental health care to law enforcement and more. Lucas was your everyday normal kid growing up in America who loved spending time with his younger brother and family. He loved riding his bike, playing sports, making music, traveling, and truly enjoying life. He found his passion in law enforcement and had a full career of opportunities and success ahead of him. Then everything was cut short by the leading cause of death in law enforcement. Please welcome to the Your Positive Lens podcast, the president and CEO of the Lucas Foundation, Brian Sizemore, and here representing the Lucas Crusade from Homeland Security Investigations in Detroit, Deputy Special Agent in charge, Jared Murphey. Gentlemen, good morning, and thank you for providing us the opportunity to talk about the Lucas Foundation and the Lucas Crusade. This is, I believe, a very important topic, and I believe one that the Lucas Foundation is not only seeking to achieve with its mission, is actually very much needed across the board for law enforcement. So, again, gentlemen, good morning.
Good morning, Scott. Thanks for having us.
Morning to you, Scott.
Absolutely. Most certainly, Jared. So, Brian, let's go right into it. You have the Lucas Foundation. Can you tell us about the Lucas Foundation, and its mission?
It's pretty straightforward. Due to some unfortunate circumstances, our family started the Lucas Foundation a little more than a year ago, about 16, 17 months ago. And we are on a mission to provide better and more, how should I say it, vast amounts of mental health care for law enforcement. I think that with a lot of the smaller departments, there is little to none. The larger departments, I think they have it. The larger departments and agencies, but the agents or the officers themselves are reluctant to engage with that mental health care, and we're trying to change that. There's a stigma that's involved with the mental health care for law enforcement officers, and we're trying to change that as well, because it's a sad situation where, and Jared will talk more about this, where more law enforcement officers are dying of suicide than they are in the line of duty, and how that is happening is, I just can't wrap my head around it. And what can we do? Anything? What do you tell us what we can do to help?
And I understand with the foundation and your mission is not just the awareness, but ultimately to bring education. And you go out to departments, you go out to recruit, and you actually want to create an education program over time, an evolution with. So.
Right. The long-term goals. I would like to have a mental health treatment program designed by law enforcement, created by law enforcement, specifically to treat law enforcement. How we get to there, we're just taking them baby steps and figuring that out. I've engaged with some mental health professionals that are on the right path to helping that succeed. A more short-term goal is something I've been thinking about. A lot of the smaller departments now, the local departments, are appointing health and wellness officers within their department, one or two officers on that department staff. I would like to see if it's possible to start like a training program for them where they can come and engage with other health and wellness officers and take that knowledge and that training back to their department and know what to look for, know which questions to ask, those types of things.
Yeah, starting at the ground level.
Yes.
Having someone right there immediately available in the departments around the country. But the Lucas Foundation is not just a name, right? The Lucas Foundation is an acronym.
Yes.
Right? So tell us a little bit more, because this was not just something like that you just thought of because you just want to support alone, but there's, like I said, it was born out of a personal tragedy. So tell us more what the word Lucas stands for. And
it
how
stands
it came about.
for Law Enforcement United Crusade Against Suicide. Now, the acronym actually spells my oldest son's name. Luke. His name was Lucas. I'm sorry.
Take your time, sir.
And we lost him last year to suicide. He was a rookie police officer in Atlanta, and he took his own life on January 9th, 2024. And almost immediately we came up with this idea for the foundation. Now, at the time, I didn't know what we wanted to call it. That came, within a few days of his passing, but that's how this was born.
And if we may, let's go back to the beginning, because we know what January 9th was for you, but there's a story. Lucas's life was just like any other family.
Just like
it
any
wasn't
other
a situation. So if you can tell us some of the joy in the beginning. He's born, he's a young child. You bring him home from the hospital.
Yes.
Tell us about those stories, and as his life progressed.
He was an everyday, normal kid living in this country. I mean, his mom and I have been married for years, and she's a school teacher, and I work for AT&T, and so we've been blessed to have good, stable jobs. When we decided to start a family and Lucas was born, I can remember him in the hospital when he was born. He was very quiet, and one of the nurses, I mean, this is minutes after he was born, one of the nurses told me to start pulling his hair, and I was doing it very, very reluctantly, very easily. And she's like, no, she said, you got to pull his hair. You need to make him cry, because it's good for their lung development and getting the fluids and stuff out. So here's this little baby boy. I'm holding him 5-10 minutes after he's born, and I'm already, they're already telling me to make him cry. So I'm pulling his hair, and that's one story. He was, like I said, a everyday normal kid, friends, sports, bicycles. Our family had a place up north that we would go to quite often, and he did everything that a young boy does when he was growing up. School, and then high school. He played sports in high school and went on to Eastern Michigan University and graduated from there. So he had a great childhood. And
he was very much involved with the family. I believe very close to his grandmother.
My mother-in-law, my wife's mother, she's elderly. She lives with us now. And that we got a really close-knit, tight family. But that made that relationship even closer, the fact that she lives with us. So, and I'm sure you've read or seen, he was a little bit of a clown, and constantly was teasing her and pranks and little jokes, and they were really close.
You're right. I did read quite a bit of it, and it's he shared joy. the
Yes.
stories are he showed. He did it with not just his comical approach, but he played music, he played a guitar.
Yes.
Right? The individuals who had their interactions with him all talk about how he made them smile.
Yes. Yep. That was him.
So and what were some of the activities he did enjoy doing as a child? Or was there what were the high school or even after high school that he just enjoyed doing in general?
He when he was a child, he did everything that normal children did. Like I said, he played sports. He loved riding on his bike. And then when my parents bought that place up north, we had little 4-wheelers. We had go-karts. He liked to run around on the trails up there, and he liked being outside. When he was old enough, I started taking him deer hunting, and he took to that like a duck to water and loved that. Like he even when he was in Georgia, he couldn't wait to come home to go hunting with me, and he looked forward to it every year. He taught himself to play the guitar and the piano, and he played the bass guitar as well, all self-taught. He would record himself and watch videos and learn how to do that. Loved traveling. He was always looking or booking some type of trip to go on. Him and my nephew were really into going to concerts and some of the music festivals and stuff. So he really liked his music. He did a lot of that.
And he's an older brother. And I think you have a younger son
he
who
is an
Lucas
older
was
brother.
also
Yep.
very close to.
Younger son, Evan. He is 23. And they were really, really close, and I know it's affected him. He's quiet about this topic, and I know it's affected him deeply. And he's at first his struggle was visible. We could tell that he was struggling. Now it's not as apparent. I know it's still there, and it's hard because it was his only sibling, and they were very close, and I don't know how you, at least for me personally, I don't know. It's not something I'll ever get over.
No.
I'm going to carry it with me forever.
Yeah, I don't think anyone can expect it to, Brian, get over it. Like I said, and what you're doing with the foundation is letting Lucas live on through that, and you're affecting lives so less individuals have to go through a similar experience, right?
Right.
So do you remember the day that Lucas said, "Dad, Mom, I want to be a police officer"? Like, what inspired him to become the police officer? What inspired him on that journey?
I don't remember him ever, like, specifically saying it like that. I know he didn't have an interest in it until he was at Eastern Michigan. He started, probably after his first year, he started taking classes that were going to take him down that path. That's where we kind of saw the interest. I don't think he ever came home one day and just said, "Hey, I want to be a police officer." Where we really saw it is when he started doing the internship with Homeland Security Investigations. He as a parent, you can see the excitement, and you can see, you hear it in their voice. They were doing things where he had to get up at 3:00 in the morning and be on the other side of Detroit by 4:00 in the morning, and he was up crack of dawn, ready to go, and that's when we really knew that some department, some agency, somewhere, he was going to be working for them, and it was just going to be a matter of time.
And before we continue on to that journey to Atlanta, Jared, you actually had the opportunity to meet Lucas during that internship in Detroit, correct?
Yeah, he was an intern with HSI in the summer of 2021. We have a great program where we welcome young people in to kind of explore whether or not federal law enforcement is for them. We just hired on a new class this week in my office in Detroit. He was assigned to our Global Trade Investigations group, which handles investigations involving illegal export of technology and weapons and military hardware, and they do some really cool, exciting work. He was very eager to participate. Everyone liked him. He had a great attitude, and he was enthusiastic, and you could tell that he was interested and wanted to be involved in everything, whether it was a surveillance or search warrants or witnessing interviews of suspects or presenting cases at the United States Attorney's Office, stuff like that. Great attitude. Whenever I think about him, I remember a moment where he walked by my office, and he had just started the internship a week or two beforehand, and he walked by, and I stopped him real quick and said, "Hey, how's it going?" And I just have this vision of him in the doorway of my office. We liked him very much, and had circumstances been different, he very likely would have been a special agent with HSI today.
Appreciate you sharing that, because he said you have that memory, which is phenomenal to have. He said that image in the doorway. Brian, if you can take us through that. So he does his externship, and then he moves down to Atlanta. How did the Atlanta opportunity come about?
Well, he, for lack of better terms, he got a lot of law enforcement in my family, and a lot of local law enforcement, and he would have been offered a job. All he had to do was ask for it. But he wanted to do the exciting things and have lots of opportunities within law enforcement that you just most of the time you don't get that with like a local police department. So a family member told him, like, if that's what you want, then you got to get out of our little area here, and you have to go to a big city, or you have to go with a federal agency. And at the time, the only federal agency that would hire you without prior law enforcement experience was the Border Patrol. And he didn't seem excited for that. He didn't. I don't think he wanted that yet. I think he had the vision of going more towards Jared and HSI, because his uncle had just retired from there. So I think that's what he had in the back of his mind. So he had to get that law enforcement experience first. He started looking online and applying, and he saw like a job fair thing. Atlanta PD does that all over the country, even now, still to this day. And he applied, got some type of email response back, and he went down to Atlanta for vetting and testing and physical and everything. And I believe he came home, and then within a few days he had a job offer. It's kind of like the military. They tell you, okay, if you accept the job offer, then your academy class is 277, and this is the day it starts. He was fortunate enough to the Atlanta Police Foundation years ago started building a four-story apartment building for the police recruits. Turns out that the traffic problems and the housing difficulties in the Atlanta area were a hindrance for the recruits, so the Police Foundation helped them build this apartment building, and he was lucky. He got a roommate, got a nice 2-bedroom apartment, and I can't remember the date, but we ended up we moved him in there to start the academy, and it was a good 13, 14 months that it took him, to get through the academy and then complete the field training, and before he became a rookie police officer.
So before we go into that next phase, I know he's engaged as well. That's his fiance with she's down in Atlanta, or she moved? She's obviously involved in this. She's going through the experience.
She was from this area, so they were planning on building a life down there in the Atlanta area. At least, Scott. He may have loved it I know he was talking about opportunities within the Atlanta Police Department where command staff were kind of giving him suggestions, different paths to choose. And he was talking about those and was excited about those. So he may have, for all I know, he may have stayed. He could have stayed there. He could have loved it and stayed there. I know he liked the area. He did like Atlanta very much.
And he was having a very successful first year. He was doing very well with everything.
Yep. Like our work shifts kind of overlap. Like I'm going into work when he was coming home and vice versa. So I talked to him once, probably twice, almost every single day. So, I heard all the stories and he loved it. He loved that job.
So if we move to January 9th,
Mm-hmm.
tell us about that day, because I would imagine, like you said, it was an ordinary day for him. Did you have that phone call with him that morning as you traditionally would? Like, what was that day like for you?
Well, he was off, and I remember, I can remember the evening well because it was the night. It was the 8th was the night of University of Michigan's football team played in the national championship game. Him, Lucas, and a friend of his walked over just a normal little burger bar within walking distance of their apartment. They walked over there, had some dinner, and watched some of the game, came back to his apartment and watched the rest of it. And I'm assuming they went to bed. His friend they both had apartments in the same apartment complex. So his friend lived around the other side of it. And then I was at work. The morning of the 9th, and it was 5:06 a.m. I got a routine. I walk into the building. I set my personal stuff down like on this table desk type thing, and I go out into the back of the building and start my work day and start unlocking stuff and opening stuff, and my coworker came running with my phone. She said, "Evan is blowing your phone up." And so she handed me my phone. Now that at the time that wasn't odd because Evan played college football and they practice at 6 a.m. So I just thought something's wrong with his car or, something simple like that.
Yeah.
So I called him back, and when he answered, I think the very first things out of his mouth were, "Dad, you got to sit down." And I said, "What?" And he said it again. He said, "Dad, you got to sit down." And I said, "Evan, just tell me." And he told me, he said, "Luke is dead." And I say this a lot. One of these days I'll ask him, because what my brain heard was he accidentally shot himself. But I don't know if that's what Evan actually said. So I told him, I said, "Stop everything you're doing and get home." Now, he went to school about 45 minutes from home, so he did. He left and started to make his way home. I called Marie, my wife, Lucas's mom, and she was I don't even know if she said any words. She was just incoherent, like total state of shock, crying, like inconsolable. And I just told her, I said, "Hey, I'm on my way home. I'm coming home right now." So I started to drive home. I work about a half hour away. And on my way home, I'm looking for a flight. I'm looking for the fastest way I can get to Atlanta. And there wasn't anything until later in the afternoon, like lunchtime, 1:00-ish. And by the time I got home and walked in the door, I had already decided that I'm just driving. I'll be more than halfway there by the time I could get a flight. And ironically, I was supposed to go out of town for work the following week, so I already had some stuff packed. I was semi ready for a road trip, so I grabbed that bag and what money I had laying around, and I told Maria, I was like, I'm leaving right now. I said, I'm not waiting for my family members. I'm not waiting. I'm going. I want to get to Atlanta as fast as I can. She, now obviously with her mom living here would have made it difficult for her to go, but when I walked in the door, it's hard to describe the sounds. It's just immense, gut-wrenching pain. The sounds that she was making. I'm sorry. And she told me, she said, "There's no way I can go see him like that." And I'm like, "Okay, you don't have to. I'll go." So I left. I was probably on the road on I-75 heading south by 6:15. It was that fast.
Ryan, there's so much emotion that comes to that story, just even listening to it, right? And I'm sure Jared, same thing, right? The feelings that I can't imagine what you, Marie, and Evan, and again, your mother-in-law living with you, what you guys felt that moment, because what I feel, and I'm only hearing the story versus, it's your child. Just a couple of questions with that. Evan got the phone call first.
Yeah, so I think I'll have to ask him that too. I believe no one ever tried to call me. I never received a phone call. I think they probably tried to call Marie, and she was awake. She was awake at that time. She's a school teacher, so she's up getting ready to start her day, and she probably didn't answer or didn't recognize the number, and they probably had Evan as a contact and called him. And this is ironically one of the things that I mention when I do talk to the recruits at the police academy. Now, again, I heard all the stories, of the academy and his friends and classmates, and so I knew a lot of their names, but I didn't have phone numbers for any of them. So when something happens, I had nobody to contact, nobody to call. I don't believe Lucas ever gave them my phone number, so no one. It would have just been more reassuring is probably the wrong word. I would have liked to talk to somebody that I knew for confirmation, or I would have liked to have, once Evan got that call, I wish there was somebody I could have immediately called and say, "Hey, what the heck's going on?" But it didn't turn out that way.
And now that drive, you tell the story. You started coming up with the foundation idea on that drive.
Yeah. So, on the way down there, as you can imagine, it's an 11-hour drive from my house to the Atlanta area, and I don't think it was immediate, like within the first few hours, because it was still sinking in a little bit. So getting back to the notification and the phone call, I had no idea who to call or who to ask. So it popped in my head to call the desk sergeant. In Atlanta, they call their precincts zones instead of a precinct. So I called. I'm looking on my phone, and I looked up the phone number to Atlanta Zone 4, and I called, and the young lady that answered the phone said, Sizemore, we're getting all these reports. Are you okay? And I said, I'm assuming because my caller ID came up, and she saw the name. And I said, "Ma'am," I said, "my name is Brian Sizemore." I said, "I'm Lucas's dad." And I said, I'm getting the same reports, and I am on my way to Atlanta right now. I said, please have somebody call me back. And she said that Major Clay, who was the commander of Zone 4, was on his way to the scene and would call me, and he did. A few minutes later, he did call me, told me the same thing. He said, I'm on my way there. I'll call you back when I have some more information. So I at that point, I hadn't called anybody. I wanted to know for sure that he had passed. And about, I want to say it was just before 7 a.m. Chief Shearbaum, the Atlanta police chief, called me himself and confirmed that he had passed away. He said that he was on his way to the Zone 4 roll call for that morning because he wanted to tell them himself before, I'm sure, rumors and people are talking, so he wanted to tell him himself. And then after I talked with Chief Shearbaum and I knew for sure that he was gone, that's when I started making phone calls to all of my family members to tell them. And then probably after that is when it started to sink in and the inspiration for the foundation came. As difficult as it is for us to deal with this, we struggle every day. It's something comes up. Sometimes they're silly things, and it reminds you of him, and it's hard to deal with, and we just don't want other families or other parents or other siblings to have to go through this, like on a personal note. But there's got to be a better way to help these law enforcement personnel. I don't know what the treatment is like. I don't know what is being done. Personally, I don't know, but it's not working.
Yeah. What I want to do, Brian,
let's try something else.
Absolutely, and I want to go into a couple things with Jared, but there's one thing you wrote in a story that really it all impacts me. But there's a part you mentioned in between your drives when you had to go into his apartment, and
yes,
that invoked. You said it's cologne, the smell.
So that was really once you get over the, and that's probably the wrong set of words too. You never get over the shock. Everything. I'm the oldest sibling in my family. My parents are both still alive. My siblings are still alive. I've never had to make funeral arrangements for anybody or do anything like that. So once I arrived in Atlanta, that first day was so busy making phone calls and trying to make arrangements for him because he had to go to a funeral home there. They had to prep him to be transported back to Michigan, and then when I did get back, we had to make all those arrangements too. So it was almost like planning 2 funeral services. But we had to clean out his apartment. Now he had bought a car, and I drove down, so I had my pickup truck. And he was a young man just starting out, so he didn't have a lot. He had furniture that most of was given to him. Everyone pitched in. He had some stuff out of someone's storage locker. He had bought a bed, and just like you would think a young man would be, first apartment.
Right.
But, and I did not expect that at all when we had to wait. We had to wait because Atlanta Police Department had to have the hallway and the bathroom cleaned. That morning, it was probably 4 a.m. He went into the bathroom and got, took his clothes off, got in the shower, and put a pistol in his mouth and shot himself. So they had to clean that. And so Paul, with Lucas's uncle, was the retiree from HSI. God bless him, multiple times offered to come to Atlanta to help us, or help me get through all of that. And I was more worried about Marie. I even told him, I said, if you want to go somewhere, go home and be with your sister, because she was like a different person. I mean, it's like staring off. I'll never forget that. I can't get that out of my head now. So when I was talking to him, he told me he must have reached out to somebody in Atlanta I'm guessing with HSI, Jared, and confirmed, and it came up that I had to go into his apartment and get his stuff, and he told me, don't go in the bathroom. So I'm not no rocket scientist, but that was the first time that I knew that's where it happened. So the way his apartment is set up, when you walk in the door, I mean, you look down a hallway and the bathroom's right there. So when we walked in, visually, that's the first thing I see. And what shocked me was that they couldn't clean it well enough, so they took wrecking bars and had to rip the floor out in the hallway in front of the bathroom and the flooring in the bathroom. They actually ripped it out. I don't know. I'm guessing that might have been easier than trying to clean it. But in either case, I saw that. That was one of the first things I saw. But then as I stepped into the apartment, like you mentioned, the smell, I could smell like his cologne. I could smell his clothes. I could smell there was still stuff on his kitchen counter that he had cooked, and glasses and cups and dishes, and it that overwhelmed me. His smell, just, I broke down.
And I think you said that was the first time it really truly,
right,
that emotion came.
Yep. And fortunately there was several APD officers with me, and they were all so comforting and so helpful that, like, if I were by myself, I don't think I could have got through that.
I appreciate you sharing all this, Brian. The APD officer support, I think, was crucial for you probably in that moment, like you said.
Yes, because and the one that was hugging me was his best friend. He had two very special friends that he went through the academy with, and one of them was there with me. The other one was actually on duty and couldn't be there at the time.
If we can try to transition from that, Jared, like Brian said, there was no signs. This happens 3 to 4 times more than a felonious line of duty death. To help us better support our officers and better understand the challenges our officers face, I think we need to better understand what they encounter, what they experience. And it's not just about necessarily what they see on the job, but sometimes within their personal lives, and just because of the challenges that the role of law enforcement might lead into their personal life, right? So, and initially, can you share with us some of the experiences that an officer may encounter in the line of duty and how that impacts them in their everyday life struggle, just in the line of duty alone, before we get into the personal aspect of it?
Yeah. So to set the stage, the story that Brian told is tragic. This is the worst thing that's ever happened in his life, in the life of his wife, of his son. And it's a moment that hasn't ended, right? And as personal and terrible it is for the Sizemore family, this happens all over our country. Suicide is the leading cause of death for law enforcement. And I just want to let that sink in for a moment, because it doesn't make sense. Law enforcement is one of the most dangerous professions that one can have. And yet, the biggest danger to a law enforcement officer is himself or herself. And you have to ask yourself why that is. If there were any other threat that law enforcement faced that was causing this number of deaths, we would adjust our training. We would adjust our policies. We would adjust our equipment. We would buy new technology. We would address the threat in a way that made us safer. And yet, we're not even aware of the scale of this. So there's an organization called First Help that has done a study, and they have data from 2016 to 2022. And they've tracked, I believe it's 1,287 law enforcement suicides. When you compare that to law enforcement deaths that have been tracked by the FBI, well over half, if you add in suicides to other deaths that law enforcement experience, suicide accounts for well over half. Now, if you take out training and accidents, it's like 7-3 in favor of suicide. So if you compare suicides versus felonious assaults on law enforcement that result in deaths, almost 70% of those deaths are suicides. And that is just unbelievable. You know, you think of all the training that we do in law enforcement, and it's ingrained in us to ask for help when you're on shift, right? Mm-hmm. Get on the radio, you call for help, officer in need of assistance. An officer swarm to help one another. But something happens when you're off duty, that's not built into our mindset yet. And if you ask for help off duty when you're struggling with something, there's a stigma that's associated with that. And we're trying to overcome that. Law enforcement work is difficult. It's a hard profession for a number of reasons. There are chronic stresses, the shift work, long hours. There's not that many lines of work where the night shift is one of the most important times to work. Most Americans work Monday through Friday from 9 to 5. Law enforcement work around the clock. The sense of duty that law enforcement officers feel is very strong. And when things don't go right at work, for one reason or another, they internalize that and they bury it and they hold that. Law enforcement officers routinely miss holidays, miss birthdays, miss anniversaries, miss kids' sporting events. There's a lot of empty chairs at dinner tables in law enforcement families at night. And over time, that makes that takes its toll on law enforcement. There's other factors as well. Erratic sleep patterns, where for this month you're working night shift, and then next month you're going to go to graveyard or to swing shift or to day shift, and that change it's not good on the body. And then meanwhile, that doesn't even take into account the acute stresses that law enforcement endure, where based on incomplete information, in a split second, law enforcement officers have to make a decision potentially to take somebody's life. And even when they make those decisions correctly, those things weigh on a law enforcement officer. No one goes into this work wanting to take a life. And even beyond the tactical application of use of force, law enforcement officers see things that stick with them and are not positive. This is a line of work where you routinely encounter horrible things. And it's the only line of work where a law enforcement officer's engagement with people is almost always on their worst day. So those things take a toll over time on law enforcement, and I think that's one of many factors that contribute to high suicide rates. The other one is community. It's a profession that's not necessarily loved. I think we're coming out of an era, we're emerging from an era where the hatred for law enforcement is starting to decline. I think that's a positive thing. But law enforcement officers serve a community that doesn't necessarily support them. And so those are factors that contribute to law enforcement suicide.
Yeah, you mentioned a couple of good points, well, a lot of good points, I should say, but, one of the things that officers are so great at is asking others how they can help them. But the one thing they're probably most terrible at is asking themselves how they can help themselves, right? They serve the community. what they're first and foremost doing. But like I said, in their families sometimes do take that sacrifice that, like I said, they're empty chairs, holidays, nothing. There's officers that tell stories they haven't been able to be attending a Christmas with their family for 10, 15 years because they've always worked that shift. Right? It's just part of the role. Going into the support, I know a lot of departments have incorporated peer support networks. They have individuals on the ground, and a lot of that transition from calling it rather than PTSD to PTSI because it's a mental injury that may occur within the line of duty versus the physical injury. Can you share with us a little bit about the leadership aspect of it? Because I know we said destigmatize it, and I think within the ranks of officers, it's becoming more and more destigmatized. But I think it's really important that the leadership ranks in the departments also start to do that, because it's that old school mindset, suck it up and move on, versus this is a call for help, and asking for assistance when something is feeling off is not a sign of weakness, but actually a sign of strength that you're working to get better. Can you share some light on that for us, Jared?
Yeah, Brian said something a few moments ago that I think is really impactful, and that is what we're doing is not working, right? I mentioned that if there were any other cause of 1,287 line of duty deaths, we would adjust our training. So leaders need to lead, and we need to change the way we're doing business. And I'm trying to do that within my own organization. HSI and numerous law enforcement agencies are trying to really emphasize peer support, because, as Brian said, law enforcement officers understand one another. Sometimes even their families don't understand what they go through, but cops understand cops. And cops feel more comfortable talking to cops than they might to a psychologist or a therapist. And there's just a level of trust that's there that we're trying to build upon. One of the things that we're trying to do, and I hope we can talk about it a little bit, is we're trying to do something extreme to draw attention to this crisis. And so in September, the Lucas Foundation is sponsoring a 1,000-mile law enforcement relay run, which starts on September 23rd in Atlanta. Lucas's former home, the training facility where he began his law enforcement career, and it's going to proceed day and night through Georgia, Tennessee, Kentucky, Indiana, Ohio, and finally finish in the Detroit metro area. And along the way, there's about 144 transition points. Most of those transition points are at police stations, sheriff's offices, state police, federal law enforcement offices, going through a lot of rural areas or semi-rural areas where we're trying to draw attention to this issue through the run itself, through the media that it's going to draw, through some engagement with our congressional representatives, state and federal, to draw attention to this. And we're intentionally stopping at these police departments where we're transitioning the baton from one runner or one group of runners to the next to encourage discussion about this from law enforcement leaders to their officers and to their agents to drive this conversation. And I think it's really symbolic that we're doing this through a lot of smaller departments in Kentucky and Tennessee, where, as Brian indicated, the resources that an LAPD or an NYPD may have for its people, these smaller departments don't have. And so the Lucas Foundation is striving to fill that gap by providing resources to those officers in need of mental health assistance.
Yeah, I definitely want to get into the Lucas Crusade because that obviously plays a very large sponsorship, development, awareness, fundraising efforts to help with the foundation. And we're going to go into that. I just want to bring one part you mentioned too is, in talking to officers around the country about mental health, you mentioned like they feel comfortable talking to cops. Cops talk to cops. And one of the individuals I spoke with said he went into his first counselor's office when he first realized he needed help. And the person said, "I understand what you're going through." And they immediately basically walked out because they weren't a cop, but they were trying to say, "I understand it." The one he had the most success with is the one that said, "I don't know what you do in your job. I know you're a cop. I don't understand what you're experiencing," but I'm paraphrasing, "but I can help people overcome what they've experienced." So it was that shift in the mindset of realizing that I'm not a cop, so I don't relate to that level. but as
Scott,
a
let me
mental health
interrupt you
professional.
for just a second. I'm
Yes.
sorry. And this
Oh, you're fine, Brian.
this is a true story, and it hits home exactly what you're talking about. When after Lucas's funeral and everything, Marie and I both were seeing grief counselors separately at first, and then together afterwards. But when we were going separately, I went and I didn't go back. Not unlike you just mentioned, the guy walked out. I didn't walk out, but I didn't go back. And I got a phone call from the office, and they wanted to know why I missed the next appointment. I said I didn't feel comfortable with that person. I didn't, for lack of better terms, I didn't really like that person. And the lady on the phone, she said, okay, she said, I understand. I want you to give it one more try. Come back, and I'm going to have you sit with somebody else. And like you just said, somebody understanding you, it turns out that counselor has a probably 24 or 25-year-old now police officer son here in the Metro Detroit area. So when she said that, we connected, and I knew she knew exactly where I was and where I was coming from, because she had a son on the job, and she knew what it was like to be the parent of a police officer. So I'm sorry, but that is 100% true. If you don't have some type of connection with the person that you're talking to, it's not gonna. Me personally, I don't believe it'll work.
No, and I believe that's accurate, and that's accurate in any aspect of life. So why wouldn't it be accurate in this aspect of life, right? And usually when you have a connection with somebody, you build trust, you build confidence, you build that bond, and it helps you overcome many obstacles. Mm-hmm. If it's a spouse in a relationship, or if, like I said, if the counselor is, that's necessary for progress. If we go back to, like I said, Jared, you do tremendous amount and with the Lucas Crusade and helping develop it. And like I said, this is a 1,000-mile run. This is not just around the block. This is not just stairs at a stadium locally. There's a lot that has to go into this to make it successful. There's a lot of individuals, agencies throughout the country, stopping stations. I know it raises money for the foundation, but you need sponsors. You need corporate support. You need individuals out there who are willing to help make this continue to be successful. Tell us how we can assist you, how we can make sure that individuals are getting the accurate message to ensure that the Lucas Crusade gets what it needs to make this the most successful run it can be.
Yeah, thanks for asking that question. We recently had two pretty good sponsors sign on, and we hope that we get a bunch more to follow suit. Currently, Home Depot is our biggest sponsor. We're very grateful. It's a great company, supports the good guys. General Dynamics Land Systems also just signed on. We've got a bunch of smaller ones, sort of more local to our area here in Detroit. But you're right, it is logistically a complicated effort to put on. It will be successful. Brian and I are working hard to make it successful because it's our passion project. It's what we're trying to do. There's no option but success. And so we're trying to raise the word not only to get runners to come join us, whether you're a law enforcement officer, a first responder, fitness enthusiast, or just somebody that supports us, come out and run. Our website is lucascrusade.org. Registration for this run is going to open right before Memorial Day weekend, about a week from now. I believe today's May 17th. So within a week, registration will be open. We do need additional help. In particular, we're looking for a company that might be able to sponsor us with an RV to trail the run with spare runners in the back. We've got a lot of other needs on our website. You can see that. Again, it's lucascrusade.org. But in particular, I think what I'm looking for, my vision is that companies that tend to support law enforcement, whether it's through the sale of uniforms or equipment or technology or services, those companies that make a back off of law enforcement contracts, I highly encourage them to examine their conscience and ask themselves what they can do to support the organizations that pay their bills and keep their lights on. So for your audience, for your listenership, we're asking for help.
Yeah, and I will, the lucascrusade.org will be certainly in the show notes for individuals. The website is available. All the information is there. I know I've looked at that myself. The Lucas Foundation also has a separate website, the Law Enforcement United Crusade Against Suicide.com. They're both, again, will be shared. To go into what you said also, no donation is too small. No assistance is too small, right? The donation options are right on the website. You have various different amounts you can choose. I think the RV, would be phenomenal. So that RV would be for someone that could trail the runners, like I said, have backup runners in there, keep people fresh, keep people safe.
Right.
It's not going to be people just running just for the sake of running. Like I said, there's a mission behind this. The plan now, I know it's the run this year. Are we going to make this an annual run every year in the same time period? Is that the goal?
I don't think we've discussed that. It's there's nothing beyond our capabilities, I think. I'll be honest, when Jared first approached me with this, it seemed daunting, and I didn't think we would be able to pull this off. But as the weeks went by, we just kept knocking those bowling pins down. We kept, we got one more thing done, one more thing done, one more thing done, and now, like Jared said, it's become a passion, and we can visualize it, we can see it, and it's just the nuts and bolts are done. It's all the little things now.
And it's not just the website, though. They can reach out. I think you also have the email address, bringthemhome@lucascrusade.org, if they want to reach out to you that way for additional information. I know your flyer has the QR code. Again, run, pray, donate, right? There's elements to it, and all those are needed for this to be successful. But this is not the only thing you do. You have an annual polar plunge as well.
Yes, you're welcome, Scott. You want to join us? It's that water's cold.
I'm sure it is. I've been the victim of an ice bucket challenge. I know that was cold. So the polar plunge, I'm sure, would certainly be much more daunting for me. But I do have family in the Ohio area. It's a neighbor of Michigan, right? So I'm not going to promise jumping in the polar plunge with you, but I will certainly be contributing to this cause, and not just from the promotional aspect of it, but from the financial aspect of it. I think I said the story of Lucas, his journey from birth all through, I think, is a testament to you raising him as a parent, you and Marie both. The challenges he encountered, we may never know, but his legacy will live forever. The Lucas Foundation is designed, like you said, it's not just to help one-stop shop officers. It's basically to create a mission that will be sustainable and to be able to go into departments around the country, provide resources, like I said, and have someone ultimately, if we can get to that point, that's on the ground in the moment when officers need help and support. There's someone there to turn to, someone there they can relate to. But that doesn't happen without money. That doesn't happen without funds. That doesn't happen without resources. Right. So, if someone can't make again, I'm not a runner, but I can donate, right? We can do sponsorship. So those things can be done. So there's many ways we can do that. For you, Brian, is there anything that we've missed that you want to make sure that we convey to the audience about the foundation, the crusade, Lucas, that you want, or a message from Mom? I know you're sharing it, but it's something that Mom would say, you know what, I want people to know this about my son.
I'm sure every parent says these things about their child, but he's a perfect son, and we've been blessed that we have two. As far as law enforcement's concerned, I said this once for a award ceremony thing. The heroes that put that badge on and wear that uniform every day, they deserve the absolute best that society can give them. And why are we not? And I think that sums it up, better. We should be throwing the best resources, the most money, the best equipment, the best treatment, the best of everything we got. Those people should be able to access it.
And Brian, you're spot on with it too. And Jared, you said it earlier, that the hatred the community was exhibiting toward law enforcement over the previous years, I do believe is starting to subside some. I think it's essential. That's, kind of what this podcast was born out of, to share that law enforcement officers, police officers, they're like everybody else. They have regular everyday lives that are just, they're trying to live them. But part of their role with the badge, with the honor, they protect their community. And those dinner tables that are missing, those holidays missing, I always try to explain to people, law enforcement officers, police officers, sacrifice time with their own families so we can safely spend time with ours. And I think it's crucial. And yes, we're not infallible. None of us are. But these individuals, they stand in the line of duty, whether they're local, federal, it doesn't matter. They stand in the line of duty to protect the everyday citizen. And these are individuals they don't know. They have no personal relationship with most of the community they serve. And they show up to calls of people they don't know to protect them. So we owe it back to the officers to provide them all the necessary resources to keep them safe, whether it's physically safe or mentally safe, right? There should be no stone that goes unturned in this. And it is, like I said, both of you have said, it's alarming to think that we have the number one cause of death of a law enforcement officer probably getting the least amount of resources to protect them. And it's unfathomable, really. And I don't want to point a finger at any one person because I don't think it's that. It's just where we are and where we need to go is different. And you said it in the beginning, we've talked about before, we can't keep doing what we're doing because it's not working. Because we know the result of not doing and not taking action. I think that old definition of insanity, right? If you keep doing the same thing, expect different results. This is where we are. Jared, is there another piece that you'd like to add that we haven't covered that you want to make sure that we get out there, whether related to the crusade or to law enforcement, or even your experience of, like I said, you met Lucas, you told the story of him being in the doorway, working with Brian, seeing the raw emotion that Brian shares. I mean, as a dad, all of us could say, if we had this experience that Brian went through, we would be having these same feelings every day. And it's real. It's not made up. It's not a story. It's not fictional, right? And Brian lived with it every day. Marie lived with it every day. Evan lived with it. And all the family lived with this. Is there anything that you want to share that we haven't captured, either from personal experience, engaging, and whatnot?
Ultimately, we're just trying to prevent this happening, just not one more time. If we can just prevent one more law enforcement suicide, that's the objective. There are a lot of charitable organizations that only a small percentage of donations actually go to what it's intended to do. I don't know what the statistics are. Brian's mentioned it in the past, but you could have a 501c3 where only 10% of donations actually go to the cause and the rest of it is overhead and who knows what. With this organization, I can tell you 100% of donations go towards providing mental health assistance to law enforcement. 100%. There's no fat. It's a small organization that is highly motivated. We're trying to engage other like-minded people and supporters of law enforcement, people that are sympathetic to this problem, to help us. So we can tell you that if your audience makes a donation, 100% of that money goes towards providing resources for mental health for law enforcement.
And cool. I think that's absolutely critical for people to understand, because people oftentimes are hesitant to donate because they're afraid they're lining somebody's pocket rather than the cause they're donating to. But that's not the case here. This is, like I said, 100% donated to the Lucas Foundation to help support law enforcement and help prevent another law enforcement suicide from happening. Now, I want to say, both Brian, you, like I said, Marie, Evan, and your extended family, my sincere condolences for this experience, this tragedy you went through, but also the strength you've had to come out of it. And again, you never fully overcome it, right? But the strength you've had to persevere every single day, to take one step every single day forward, and not just for your own personal recovery, but prevent someone from experiencing this that you're going through, to prevent these actions from ever happening to anybody else. And we can't stop everything, but as Jared said too, if we can prevent one, and if we can prevent one every day, one every month, whatever it might be, we have to start with preventing one.
Right.
So, what you're doing, I think, is phenomenal. Jared, you're a tremendous support behind it. And again, you're on the federal level and you're speaking to the support. So it's not a situation where it's like, oh, this is just local. No, this is the federal level. You're someone who recognizes it from Homeland Security Investigations, right? And the crusade being such an important part of that. And your understanding and your experience as an officer for 20 plus years, as an agent, I should say, in spreading that word and getting all the support you can. I really think it's phenomenal what you were doing for this. I think it's the right thing to be done, and I appreciate you guys both taking the time. We're going to do everything we can to promote this, and I hope the listeners all realize that this, while it's about law enforcement, individuals face these struggles every day. But we're talking about, these individuals that are protecting them every day, so let's give them what they need to protect themselves. So I appreciate you both taking the time to be on the podcast today and giving me the opportunity to actually share the message of the Lucas Foundation and the Lucas Crusade. If I can be of any additional help beyond this, don't ever hesitate to reach out. We will promote all we can to make sure that this gets recognized. Again, for those who recognize, lucascrusade.org is available, up and running for donations. Registration for the run opens up here. Memorial Day is a week away. I'll be able to do that. Donations are available there. Corporate sponsorship is essential to make this even a bigger success than it will be. We need that. So again, RVs, donations. Again, thank you. I know you mentioned it. Home Depot, General Dynamics. That's phenomenal to have two larger sponsors on there. But I appreciate you guys taking the time to be on the show today, taking the time to share this message and give me the opportunity to share it with the listeners, because it is phenomenal. And thank you both very much.
Thank you, Scott. We appreciate you having us, and it's only going to help. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
You're a great
Jared,
American,
thank you.
Scott. Thanks for helping us shed light on this and for all the work you do through the Positive Lens podcast.
Absolutely. Thank you, gentlemen.
If you liked this episode, follow us on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcast. Provide us your feedback in the comments and leave us a rating or review. We truly appreciate your opinion. And then follow us on LinkedIn or Facebook to get all the latest updates. Remember, you can always find places that will share negative law enforcement news stories. But here, at Your Positive Lens, you will only find your positive law enforcement news stories. Once again, I'm your host, Scott T. Thanks for listening, and we'll capture you on the next Your